Tonight is Super Tuesday. The winner of the primary process for the Republicans needs 1,215 delegates to win, and there are quite a few up for grabs tonight. We're going to get the lowdown on Super Tuesday now by going to Ryan Schmelz. He's Fox News, Capitol Hill, and White House correspondent, and he's on with us right now. Ryan, thank you for being with us here on the Annie Frey Show. It's good to have you.
Of course, Annie. Always great to be on.
Oh, we appreciate it. Give us the lowdown of what voters here. We talked to Missouri and Illinois quite a bit right here, but across the country, this is going to be a pivotal night for this primary and caucus campaign.
Right. And I think one thing that we're watching that I don't think is on a lot of people's radars is I think the expectation is that President Biden and Donald Trump are going to run away with their respective primaries. I think it's just a matter of how much they win by, not that they win, right? But what I think what we need to notice is that you have in 7 contests, President Biden's going to be going up against uncommitted or uncontested in his respective ballot, while Donald Trump, as you know, is going to be going up against Nikki Haley. And I think we need to see how many of those voters either are hesitant to vote for President Biden or are not voting for former President Trump, despite the fact that he's the clear front runner. And I think, when we head into November, and I think Michigan was a great example of this, where you had over 100,000 voters in each of those party primaries voting for somebody who wasn't the front runner. Well, where are those people going to go when we get to November? Are they going to eventually support their party nominee? Are they going to vote for the other party? Or are they going to just stay home? And I think that's probably one of the big questions heading into November.
We're speaking with a Fox News Radio Capitol Hill and White House correspondent, Ryan Schmelz, about Super Tuesday tonight. One of the things that I think is kind of easy on the surface to do, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on the benefit of comparing Democrat turnout versus Republican turnout. It seems as though having 2 actual candidates in the race that are making a name for it on the Republican side might push turnout to be elevated for the Republicans, where you have an incumbent president on the Democrat side. Is there any way to measure realistically enthusiasm by party based on the turnout numbers that we see this evening?
Yeah, I think it's a little hard to do that, mainly because in President Biden's case, while there are some primary challengers, they don't really see any of them as a true threat to President Biden. And on the Republican side, I think there was definitely a point where people thought that Nikki Haley could be a threat to former President Trump, and there was a lot of playing it safe that's going on with voters who are passionate about former President Trump to still get out to the polls and make sure that they get their selection in. And I think there's also, always going to be that anti-Trump wing of the Republican Party that might go out there and vote for Nikki Haley just to make a point. So I think it's a little hard to measure what the true enthusiasm is. But I think we can also gauge some exit polling that comes out tonight and kind of see what the big issues are. I think based off some of the states that we've seen, when it comes to Republicans, the economy is usually at the top, with the border right there, too. And with Democrats, I wouldn't be shocked to see if healthcare and now women's rights be one of those top issues. It already was a big deal. Abortion is something Democrats were going to campaign on this election cycle no matter what. But did the recent IVF ruling in Alabama galvanize them yet again to maybe get out to the polls?
We're speaking with Ryan Schmelz of Fox News. He's a radio correspondent for them, and he's talking to us about Super Tuesday right now. Of the states that are participating tonight, there are two caucuses, Alaska and Utah. But there are also 2 states, big states, delegate-rich states, California and Texas, that are participating. I don't know that Donald Trump is going to win California, and I don't know that Joe Biden is going to win Texas. But is there a story to be told about these individual states, maybe even below the presidential level? Anything you're looking at in particular?
Yes, actually, quite a lot. Number one in Texas, I think we're going to find out who's going to be facing Ted Cruz this November. Everything kind of leans on being Colin Allred, who's a former NFL player and a member of a member of the House of Representatives here representing Texas right now. So I think that's kind of one of the matchups and one of the few that Democrats might actually have a chance of flipping this November, though they still face an uphill battle with doing that. I think you look at Tony Gonzalez, who's a representative from Texas in probably one of the biggest border districts in all of the United States Congress. He's facing some pushback from Republicans over some of the votes that he's had throughout this Congress, but it looks like he's still going to be able to pull through there. But I think California is going to be huge. Number one, you have the Senate race to replace Senator Dianne Feinstein, where you have 3 House Democrats running, Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, and Katie Porter. You have one Republican who's getting a lot of steam named Steve Garvey. He is a former baseball player. He was an all-star and a World Series champion with the Dodgers and an all-star with the Padres. So he has that name recognition similar to what Arnold Schwarzenegger may have had last time Republicans were successful in a statewide race. And then also, I mean, keep in mind, California might be the state that determines who has the House of Representatives because there are a number of Biden districts where President Biden won handily in 2020 that currently have Republicans representing them because, we thought this was going to be a big, election day for Republicans last cycle. California is one of the few places where Republicans really made that happen. So I think watching what the voter turnout is in some of those House races could be significant.
Fox News Radio Capitol Hill and White House correspondent Ryan Schmelz with us right now. I'm curious about voter sentiment. A lot of exit polling that takes place on any given primary night, and I always think, if you're talking about New Hampshire, we're right here, smack dab in the heart of the country in St. Louis. New Hampshire problems aren't necessarily St. Louis problems. St. Louis problems are starting to be similar to those problems in Texas because as they migrate their way up the country. But we all have our unique experiences. We have unique representation. That's what makes this country great. What kind of exit polling questions do you think that we'll be able to use to take the temperature of maybe the border problem that's plaguing our country right now, the way social issues are being addressed? Will we get a good idea of where the country is because of those exit polling questions?
Right. Well, I think we certainly can get an idea of how wide this border issue has become and how much of a priority it's become to states that are not considered border states. And I think Missouri would be a great example of that, and seeing, how the state feels and how voters in the state feel about the current border crisis. I think that's going to be huge. I think what I would caution your voters to look at is not pay attention to how Republican voters rank that issue, because we know that'll be likely towards the top three in just about any state. But I would see how Democrat voters rank that issue, because that might be a determination of how much of a liability this issue could be potentially for Democrats, or it could be something they capitalize on. Who knows? And then, of course, I think, paying attention to what Democrats think on issues like abortion and some of those other ones. I think those are always going to be huge. But I think really the big one is the economy, and seeing how that is still going to be probably one of, if not the top issue for most voters. Usually it kind of leans a little bit more Republican, but I think it is always one of the top issues for both Republicans and Democrats. And sentiment is about the direction of the economy, and that might give you an indication of whether or not the current state of the economy is going to be a problem for President Biden moving forward, or if it might be something he can run on.
Ryan, last question before we let you go, and we really appreciate your insight here on Super Tuesday, because there's going to be so much information coming in tonight. I'm a nerd. A lot of us who are in this industry, we're excited about tonight. And then there are a lot of people in this country who don't have any idea what Super Tuesday is. And here's the other thing. A lot of people don't know what Nikki Haley's path was to Super Tuesday. My question to you is even more difficult. Is there a state where you think Nikki Haley can go through to get a path past Super Tuesday?
Well, I think she does have a decent chance in Virginia. That's some of the polling I've seen where she might stand the best chance of beating former President Trump. For some reason, that state has always been kind of a liability for him. He's lost it every time he ran for president. I believe he lost it to Marco Rubio and didn't even come in second place in that state back in 2016, despite a very successful Super Tuesday for him. So that might be some of the states that we're watching. But I think really Nikki Haley's case today is going to be trying to scoop up as many delegates to maybe still have a chance or a path to victory. But I think those are going to be the bleeding questions when today's over is, does Nikki Haley drop out, or does she find a way to stay in the race?
Yeah, as long as the donations keep coming in, I imagine that she has found her way. But we'll see if that's going to even continue to be the case. Ryan Schmelz, thank you for being here with us today. Great to talk to you.
Of course, Annie. Thank you so much.
Of course. Bye-bye. Fox News Radio Capitol Hill and White House correspondent Ryan Schmelz.